Morning, everyone. Welcome to the Modern Market. This is our daily show from Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, 12 p.m. GMT. Every day of the week, we discuss all things to do with the modern market. That includes the crypto market, the NFT market, and how to make some or a lot or no money on the internet. Depends how you do it. I'm your host, Bchek. I'm joined by my legendary co-hosts, Legendary and Sammy. We're going to get into everything in just a moment. But just before we do that, a reminder, friends, that nothing that we say here is financial advice. We do not know anything for sure. So please do proceed with caution and exercise your own judgment. With that out of the way, Legendary, it is Wednesday. It is the 3rd of April. It is 12:06 GMT, 7:06 EST, 13:06 CET. How are you doing?
GM, I get my own time zone even. I'm very impressed. Love it.
Can you tell
Doing
us
quite
another time zone?
well. Sorry?
Can you tell us another time zone? What the exact
Another
time is?
another time zone. Let's go West Coast, isn't it? 4 a.m. on the West Coast if it's 7 a.m. EST? Yeah, it's 3 hours. So
Could
4
be.
a.m. on the West Coast.
There we
Which
go.
makes me wonder what Frank was doing the couple of times when he joined us on our show at 4 a.m. But anyhow,
Shout out to our West Coast listeners who apparently do listen in every now and again when they're on the way back from a night out. So love that.
love it. Sounds like a good thing to do when you hit the club to listen to the modern market on your way back. Or like a very degenerate thing, but I do love it in either way.
Yeah.
Very good week. Very good week ahead. It's Stimmy week. We have Wormhole as an airdrop coming out in 23 minutes from now. We have Zeus. We have Tensor, which is also part of the headlines. So definitely very, very prepared for that week. Also, we have the results coming out today, which was the most oversubscribed pre-sale that we've seen so far.
Okay.
With, what was it, 45,000 ETH that went into it?
Something outrageous. Yeah. Something outrageous. But to be clear for people, do you want to just explain what was and why it's not as ridiculous that there was so much money in it? Like, oh, yes, we're in the pre-sale meta and everyone was sending loads of money to everyone. Many of which were scams. Well, it's not a scam, right?
No, it's not a scam. It's the ecosystem token of the Yoga Pets, Kungs, Cups ecosystem, focused on digital well-being, physical well-being, mental health, and basically integrating that as a payment token. It's also, I think, important to know that Kungs and Ray did used to run Memeland together before they split up, and Kungs went out and did his own thing, which became to be that ecosystem and now the well token. They did a community sale in a raffle style, so basically raising, I think, 13,000 ETH. And you could deposit more than that. You could deposit beyond that cap in a similar way how Pixelmon did it. And the results are going to be raffled out today. There was a questing system. There were guaranteed codes for holders. So there's a bit of complexity. It's not just that the most money wins the highest allocation, but there's a couple more factors to consider. Also benefits for holders. I think Pixelmon holders, for example, had a couple of benefits when it came to that. But despite the fact that obviously the tickets or the entries who won't win will be refunded, I still think it's a ridiculously high number if you consider that basically that 40,000 ETH deposit number was reached within the first hour, and that meant already it was more than 3 times oversubscribed.
Yeah, pretty outrageous. Two main takeaways for me from that, and then throw to Sammy, and then we'll get into the headlines and the read and the bigger discussions that we have today. The first is just the amount of idle capital that is just so ready and waiting to send. And then the second thing is the fact that this pre-sale is another one out of East Asia. And I think it's something that might not have been as much on people's radar here in Europe or in the US, based on conversations, based on what people speak about. People on our timelines are obsessed with all of the Solana meme coins and all the other meme coins going wild, but I didn't see as much about it on this. It might be the case people knew and they were just doing it silently so that other people didn't get in on it. Then that might have been a case too. But that's just my observation.
So
Legendary.
one more comment on that. Even if you look the questing platform that was built on OP BNB, so the scaling solution above the BNB network, and was before that pre-sale hype or public sale hype already, was the fourth most used protocol on that blockchain, with hundreds of thousands of wallets doing the questing, which is quite surprising, because if you compare that to other things like, I don't know, Mon Protocol or block games or whatever has been farmed before that, that was very, very apparent and very public on the timeline. But that, as you said, didn't really hit our bubble. But I'm very glad when the results are out, because I committed basically all of my liquid ETH stack into it, and I'm in dire need of liquidity.
Yeah, I put a big stack into. And Sammy, you were just saying in the comments, like, you forgot you'd even done that. How are you feeling about that? Nice to have some ETH coming back to you today, I guess. If you didn't actually get in.
I do have a spreadsheet tracker, but I don't check it daily, and I did wonder where some of my liquid ETH had gone. So yeah, it's just suddenly you mentioning that this morning is like, it's like that light bulb moment. Okay, there's a bit in there. That's nice. But I'm curious, Legendary, when you get that liquidity back, what are you going to do with it?
You know it. You know what I'm going to do with it. I'm going to go straight into Blast to farm more gold.
Yeah, if it's not already apparent, Legendary is chief gold farmer at the moment. I'm also a gold farmer, but kind of reluctant gold farmer, a bit of a lazy gold farmer. Legendary is chief gold farmer, should be cracking the whip. Sammy, where do you sit between us on the scale?
Somewhere between, probably a more humble gold farmer, but a bit more active than you, less of a whale than Legendary. So yeah.
So we represent the whole spectrum, but we are united by the fact we know that we should be farming gold. We know that. That's all we know. Okay, interesting stuff. We're going to get into, as Legendary mentioned, it's kind of moving into, we always talk about airdrop season, but there's going to be like a week of multiple things. Wormhole's coming out today. We're going to do some live coverage on that when the token goes live in about 15-20 minutes. And we're going to touch on some other opportunities on Solana, the last few that are kind of waiting to come out in just a moment. But let's get into the headlines, as always, from the snapshot, which is pinned up top. I'm going to share it for the people watching in. If you do find it brings you some value today, please do give it a like. And if you are watching it on YouTube, we've noticed more and more comments coming in and likes and interactions. Please do hit the subscribe button. And if you're not on YouTube, just go and hit the subscribe button anyway. You might like watching in every now and again. So we would appreciate that. Let's get into the headlines or the price action first. Number one, crypto is flat. Bitcoin at 66.2, ETH down 1% at 3.3, Solana up 3% at $183. First headline, crypto VC paradigm in talks to raise over $750 million fund. We've got a lot of context here. We'll get into more of it in a second, but just some headline points. If the deal is completed at $750 million, the fund will be the industry's biggest since the crash. The high point for crypto VC fundraising came in May 2022 when Andreessen Horowitz raised a $4.5 billion fund. That was pretty wild, actually, if you think about it now, given the context. But it seems like we're moving into that season now where the VCs are getting ready, which is kind of good, because we'll speak about it more in a moment. Number two, Solana NFT marketplace Tensor announces season 3 is over. Treasure boxes and airdrops will come next week. Hopefully a good win for Solana NFT enjoyers. And finally, CryptoPunks have 100 loans over 40 ETH that expire in the next couple of months with the floor price at 42 ETH. This was a point made by Cyrus. He pointed it out yesterday. Don't hate me for bringing this up, but there are around 100 loans over 40 ETH on CryptoPunks that expire over the next couple of months. A couple of punks sold today for 40 to 41. There's a pretty good chance we see a bunch of liquidations and punks sub 40 for the first time since summer 2021 soon. I think that's a really interesting conversation to have. And we're going to dive into that a little bit later today. So really want to have that conversation, actually, and consider the implications for the rest of the NFT market, for the punk market, but also the rest of the market. Getting into some notable sales, we had a Node Monk Gold selling for 2.2 Bitcoin, a Bored Ape Blazer selling for 92 ETH, and an X-Copy Edition Bangers and Crash selling for 19 ETH. Some other floor prices, CryptoPunks, as we said, down 5% at 42 ETH, Bored Apes at 11.8, Mutants below 2 ETH now at 1.9, down 6%, DGods at minus 2%, 1.6 ETH. Captains at 3.6, Azuki 4.3, Penguins 11.9, down a few percent. Mad Lads 132 Sol, and the Nouns winning bid was at 8.7 ETH. Legendary, that is the price action. Those are the headlines. Before we get into the headlines specifically, anything catching your eye?
A couple of things standing out to me. One is the Azuki correction, Azuki being down 20% almost over the last 7 days, basically corrected all the way down from the hype before the anime token announcement, and probably will do a similar thing as Mocha did, where you put it perfectly in one of our shows last week. We said like it feels like people are forgetting that there's a token coming, and every now and then Mocha had a news how this is something token related, and it did pump on that, despite that there was nothing really new shared, more or less a reminder of a token coming. Could be that we see the same in Azuki. Could be an interesting collection for those who want to try to time that a bit or flip that a bit. Another thing that stood out to me that's not part of the snapshot, but I found it quite significant, was to see Avagotchi, the gaming ecosystem that was built all the way back in the last bull run. They do have a token, which is the Ghost token, which used to be super stable over the last year, like hovering around 90 cents, 80 cents to $1 in that range. They did announce that they will use Base as a settlement layer and also have plans to move the token there. Token hit an all-time high on that, went up to $3.50 and is now sitting at $2.70. So that Base effect, if you want to call it like that, is very much real, as there's so much attention flowing to Base right now. That
is very interesting. Very interesting that some type of move to Base would instigate just some broad positivity. That's interesting to observe. Sammy, what do you think is going on the heat map here? Anything catching your eye from these big movers from the ETH NFTs?
I was actually going to comment on what Legendary said about Avagotchi, because I remember there was Friend Pet that launched probably a couple of months ago. Actually, must be like 6 months ago now. And that had a run up, and that was on Base originally. And people started to benchmark that against Avagotchi. And it's interesting to see that dynamic now that Avagotchi is on Base. You've now got two effectively very similar gaming products that could potentially rival. So it'll be interesting to watch how the price of their token compares to the Avagotchi Ghost token when that launches. So that's something I'll be monitoring. Outside of that, I think I've had my head in the sand casino. So I've been looking at the off-chain prices of party hats and stuff like that. So that's something that you wouldn't necessarily find on these dashboards, but they'll be launching as NFTs eventually. So that's been announced. So it'll be interesting to see when that hits the market, how much those will be priced at. The redacted Remelios, the Milady stuff, that looks like it's pumped a little bit. And I don't know if that's because it's still a segment of the audience is looking at Memecoins. So maybe that rotation of capital from wins there is coming into those types of NFTs. But it's very hard to tell.
Do you know what? The Remelios and Miladies got an Athena allocation.
Yeah, they got like 3K worth of tokens. I mean, the token pump, but yesterday was like 3K USD. So basically, Remelios got the floor price more or less airdrop to them.
Yeah. Wait, so yeah, exactly. Pretty crazy. And like, just for context, like the way that works out to get that many tokens, that was like, would have been the equivalent of having tens of thousands of dollars deposited in. So hyper valuable to have whichever NFTs that these protocols end up supporting. And the interesting thing is, apparently everyone claimed it was obvious after, but there's certain protocols now that just keep tweeting like Remelio at the end of every tweet. And then people just gamble that like, okay, well, you like those NFTs, so I'm just going to buy those in order to, because when it comes to you doing a token, you're going to drop to them probably. So something to watch out for, because I've noticed that a lot in people's communication, just sign off with Remelio. Interesting stuff. Okay. We want to get into the kind of bigger discussion for today before we hit the headlines. Today, I wanted to talk a little bit about crypto price action. Seems like people are getting a little bit spooked on the timeline from what I can tell. People are a little bit like, are we going lower? Are we ready to go higher? It feels like a bit of a dead man's, like no man's land. That's the expression I wanted to use. People definitely don't seem certain in which way we're going to go, from what I can tell. This was a post from Andrew Kang, kind of comparing it a little bit to meme coins, though. And so this was an interesting take I wanted to discuss. He said this: almost all alts are up big against BTC the last few months, expecting BTC ETH to mostly range the next few weeks as volatility continues to compress with the institutionalization of the majors. I still expect significant returns in the alt space, but mostly just confined to meme coins as the rate of new dollars coming in to crypto slows. It is in this phase that I expect increasing capitulation of crypto native boomers into meme coins, as many will no longer be able to ride in the comfort of an everything rising market. The risk for non-submitters is memes up and other alts down. There is no better ignition for submission to a new trend than a palpable liquidity drain. Legendary first, what do you think about this idea? Do you think people will be capitulating their other alts into meme coins? Could people start capitulating their main bags into meme coins? That sounded a little bit far-fetched to me, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on this, and maybe more generally about where we are in Bitcoin, ETH, and Solana as well.
I think I wouldn't go as far as saying that people will capitulate their main bags or significant parts of it. Obviously, if you buy a meme coin with ETH, you are like, quote unquote, like capitulating some of that ETH bag, but not in the sense that I'm like, fuck, I'm not sure what ETH is going to do. Is it going to be a sideways movement or whatever? So I want to ape into a meme coin. I don't think that this is the sentiment. I think rather if you have a market that is pumping and you have meme coin season at the same time, that people are more likely to go heavier in meme coins, because then you basically think that ETH is running and you want to have leverage long on that and you want to go into meme coin of your choice. I do think that even if people go heavy, it is not as much as of the total portfolio allocation. Even if it's just a high number, and it seems crazy to us to see someone like deposit 100K or buy 1 million worth of whatever token they like. So I don't really think there's a BTC or ETH capitulation coming into meme coins. I do see that sentiment. Now the timeline seems to be a bit spooked. Seems to be a bit nervous about the Silk Road, BTC moving to Coinbase. Seems to be a bit nervous about potential additional liquidation of Genesis funds in GBTC. I think another 1.3 billion that has been talked about a couple of days ago. But ultimately, if you still have the ETFs and you still have inflows going into those ETFs, even if that momentum has slowed down for the moment, I think over time that selling pressure will be just eaten up by the ETFs. So I personally am not worried at all about the state of the market, even if it goes sideways for a bit until we have some more news, whether that's the interest rates in the US, whether that's more news on an ETH ETF. I do think that could change the direction of the market, but I do think that a lot also depends from what the stock markets, obviously, and the interest rates in the States are doing. And until we have more info on that, it's gonna be a bit of a sideways movement, but nothing that really scares me.
Okay, so maybe your take is we just go maybe in agreement here that it's a bit of sideways movement and volatility compresses. Sammy, what do you think here?
Yeah, I mean, we've seen a bit of ranging recently around that all-time high level for Bitcoin. So I think probably see a little bit more of that. I can't see, unless you have those significant institutional inflows, which I do predict that there's going to be more, like a lot of analysts are saying that as well. I think, I can't remember which institution it was, they're analyzing that it was 150 billion of inflows into those 9 Bitcoin ETFs. Obviously, Grayscale is going to slow. So I think that it will eventually trend upwards at some point. But I do agree that I think it feels like the meme coins are the alts at the moment. They're the ones that the attention seems to be going to. I think there will be an altcoin season at some point, but I think it will probably have its own narratives. And I don't know if that's the market maturing a little bit, where you have those segments, whether it's AI or gaming or like different rallies, rather than last cycle, where it's literally all altcoins exploded at the same time. eased off, Bitcoin rallied, and it just rotated like that. I think it might be slightly different this time around.
I've got a question on this because I'm a little bit confused about the way people are reading the market, frankly. And I've only been around since 2021 though. So I've got a question, maybe for Legendary, maybe Sammy as well. Why are people speaking about meme coins as if there's some like complete new paradigm, as if people haven't been trading alts like for ages anyway? Like alts have, I mean, before they were just called alts, and like, okay, clearly these things are worth significantly less than Bitcoin and ETH. But we're going to trade these in order to level up the stack and get Bitcoin and ETH. And yeah, that's further down the risk curve. And in the exact same way, meme coins are further down the risk curve. You know that they're probably not going to hold forever, just like with alts as well. And you want to try to get out of them in order to increase, well, whatever. You want to make more profit into USD. You want to increase your Bitcoin stack or increase your ETH stack. But like, it feels like people are really speaking about them as if they're completely different from alts, and they're like actually going to be able to sustain themselves in a way that's like very different. Have you felt that at all, Legendary? Do you know where my reservation is coming from? Do you understand the question? Like, what's your thought there? Do you think meme coins legitimately are some completely new thing?
No, not really. But I do think that on the timeline we like to present every narrative as something completely new. Just as the first couple of weeks in FriendTech, that was presented to be a completely new app, and it mimicked very much DSO and other 2021 SocialFi apps. And when you questioned some of those people, how is it different from DSO? And we're like, it just is different. And you follow, did you use it back then? And we're like, no, I didn't. I wasn't around. So that's maybe a bit of a bias if you're new to a cycle, to say, oh, this is something completely new because it is new to that very specific person. And if it isn't that person's first or second cycle and they've seen that, it's still the better narrative to show it that it's something new, rather than saying, oh yeah, we had this before and now it's trending again. That's just not as sexy content-wise, pumpamental-wise. So I do think we like to present things as new all the time. And I think what is, because we had a massive meme season on BNB last time around. Now we are extending that to Solana, we're extending that to other L2s. We have an omni-chain meme narrative that seems to start to be forming with OmniCat. So we have more like nuanced or more specific meme narratives, which we didn't really have before in that sense. And we have like more subcultures or sub-communities forming around certain L2s. So that is something that I would say that's new, that didn't really exist before. In terms of the difference between meme coins and alts, I do think that memes are like a super liquid trade. If you want to trade specific alts, like you typically would have a hypothesis for them, whether it's Next, which did amazing as a blockchain, and they are a data abstraction layer as well that they're building, and they're running a shit ton of transactions and oracles. I think the price did a 6x, 5x over the last couple of months. Obviously, you don't know if that's going to be relevant in 2 years or not. Not Next, sorry, near protocol is the one I tried to reference. So I do think there's like more of a hypothesis and more of a like mid to long term investment in that obviously has more volatility than ETH. Whereas with meme coins, you have that instant gratification, right? You can buy a meme coin overnight, and either you wake up rich or you wake up with your bags going to zero. So you don't really have that. And I think the more you see those success stories on the timeline, obviously, and the more you have that like fragmented narrative, now also with Degen coming into play, with all the other L2s, with the Solana meme coin casino, it seems to be like a very, very dominant theme. And it seems to be a continued meme coin season. In that way, I would say this is new. We didn't have it in this way before, but meme coins per se obviously are like a very, very old concept.
Yeah, I guess I know what you mean. I guess you're kind of echoing a little bit of what I'm saying there. And DC Investor has this tweet. Brad, I see you with your hand raised. Going to come to you in just a second. Just want to share this tweet from DC Investor, very respected investor thinker on ETH. No point in fighting meme coins, he says. Almost all will go to zero over a long enough time frame. In the meantime, people will gamble on them. Best thing you can do if you hate them is just keep building your thing through it. non-speculative apps will start to go mainstream this cycle. I think that was kind of my point, which is I don't know why people are talking about them in some hyper special way as if they're entirely new, when in essence they're just something which is trading on attention. They're going to go to zero in a long enough time frame, so use them while you are able to, in order to move to allocate better as a consequence of your participation in them. Brad, see you with your hand raised. Welcome to the stage, my friend. What do you think about this meme coin discussion? Do you think that they are sufficiently different to like what people just called alts before? Like, is this a completely different investing behavior? And how should people be playing it?
Hey, good morning, guys. Yeah, I mean, calling them alts is, I think, a little off, because alts in the previous cycles was referring to basically anything not Ethereum or Bitcoin, right? There's Alto one, alt whatever.
Sure.
But like, I think everyone recognizes that yes, they are materially the same thing, right? They're just ERC20 contracts, whatever, with nothing really backing them other than social signal and attention. But I think they're recognizing, one, that it like financial nihilism is a big word you're seeing thrown around a lot, where they're trying to be a little bit predictive of where the market is going to go once everyone else enters, right? They're saying take the veil off, no one really gives a shit about the technology, which I think maybe was always the point for a lot of retail people. They just saw a way to make money. But last cycle everyone made a lot of hoopla around, like, oh, we're supporting artists, oh, we have NFTs, oh, we have the thing. And this time everyone is just saying, you know what, like, mask is off, industry is what it is, in this, at least in this sector. So you have very large funds that say, look, it's got a little bit of Lindy because we've had an entire cycle where meme coins existed. Therefore, as part of a balanced portfolio, and like, you hear this on some podcasts, actual portfolio managers say, if you're going to be a part of this industry, you have to allocate X percent of your stuff to meme coins, because one, you recognize the appeal to retail, and because like the tooling around them, frankly, has just gotten better. So yes, last time you had mentioned this a little bit earlier, like last time, cool, 25 different dogs got spun up, but that's not really culturally relevant in any way other than it's just cute dogs. Whereas now the tooling and iterations of these things are sufficient that you have things that spin up for a week and it's relevant culturally to, what's going on, Biden, Trump versus whatever. And like you start to tap into some of this predictive market analysis stuff, or prediction market out analysis, that everyone's kind of excited about but never has really taken off. But the attention game through meme coins is kind of showing that. So I think everyone recognizes that yes, same underlying thing, yes, ultimately they'll go to zero because a lot of it is attention based and there's no fundamentals behind it. But the nature of the thing has changed such that the magnitude in which it goes up is going to be bigger, different, and maybe even steal a little bit from some of the other assets that we've played with in the past, which is NFTs and whatever else.
Okay, interesting stuff. Do you think that the nature of the investment changes for people, for capital allocators? You said like, okay, it's going to be this basket. You're going to have to allocate something to it, but the very nature of it means that it's less an allocation and more like, right, we're going to have to trade this, right? Do you think people will be making, like, what's the time frame to be making bets on WIF, for example? Like, I guess every now and again there is one that will last like for a while. What would you say that time frame is for some of these things if people are going to allocate X amount of their portfolio to it?
I mean, the barbell approach is what everyone talks about, right? You have the major of the chain, which is usually the native asset, and then you have the strongest meme, because those two things are going to go together, and anything in the middle is going to be the thing that is like kind of forgotten about, just because one is so left curve and the other is so right curve, right? It's just kind of that barbell strategy is what's prevailing in a lot of these asset managers. They, again, because it's stuff that has existed and succeeded in the past, you kind of let them get to a escape velocity, right? Like WIF, I think we can all agree, has reached escape velocity on Solana. It's now tagged as the canonical meme coin over there, even though Bonk is a thing, but Bonk has utility, which is bearish. We all know that for meme coins. So WIF is the thing over there. And so now, again, on podcasts, you hear asset managers literally saying, like, if I'm going to be responsible in this industry, and my goal, and asset managers' goal is to make money, my goal is to make money, I have to recognize this thing as a legitimate asset class, and I have to allocate to it. And they're traders, right? Asset managers are traders. Time horizons are differ, based on the different funds. But, you would imagine they both somewhat peak simultaneously. So you're gonna have WIF and SOL kind of going up in tandem up until the peak of the bull run. No one knows when that'll be, but around that time, and then come down together, probably WIF a little faster. But yeah.
Interesting. I really want to link this. Thanks for your thoughts, Brad. I think that's really helpful to put that all into perspective. I kind of want to link this to our first headline today. Then we're going to do some wormhole news and airdrop stuff, and then finish off with the final headline. But I want to link this to the raise that's happened with Paradigm, who are in talks to raise over $750 million for a fund. We're talking about capital allocators and like where they might allocate. And it just seems like, after all of this bullishness up to this point, and realistically, it's been multiple months, right? Been at least 6-7 months. It feels like the institution, well, the kind of the funds are getting into gears to participate in a bigger way. So a little bit of context for this, and then we want to kind of think through some of the implications, maybe even discuss like what this means for where we are in the cycle. I think that's kind of helpful. Like when these funds come in with this amount of money, like what does that practically mean for us? So crypto VC Paradigm in talks to raise over $750 million for the fund. They said that it's founded by Coin, blah, blah, blah. If the deal is completed at $750 million, the fund will be the industry's biggest since the crash. As we mentioned earlier, the high point for crypto VC fundraising came in May 2022 when venture firm Andreessen Horowitz raised a $4.5 billion fund. Shortly after that, there was a steep downturn in digital asset prices, a bust that the asset industry is still recovering from. I don't actually find that funny, but I do find it interesting that there must be like some type of number that when these funds are raising should be like a relative signal that like we're getting to some outrageous point at the moment. That's why I'd like to discuss that in a bit. The firm has had an eventful year. This is talking about Paradigm. Last summer, Paradigm drew criticism for a perceived lack of commitment to the industry when it updated its website and removed mentions of crypto, instead focusing on artificial intelligence. Very funny to see a bunch of people pivot from crypto to AI and now seem to be back. Legendary, first thoughts here. Paradigm raising a big fund, $750 million specifically for crypto. What do you think about that? What does that mean for the industry? What does that mean for where we are in the market?
Yeah, very good questions. I think first of all, it's a very relevant info. I think we've seen the lows in VC investing last year. We've seen a very active Q4 2023 with estimates of 1.9 billion flowing into Web3 by VCs. We've seen a similar figure for Q1. I would look at both of those figures with a grain of salt. Some of the deals haven't been reported yet. There's always a bit of lag when it comes to reporting VC investments. Obviously, it's also hard to get like a comprehensive view on the entire data set. Even the best platforms to rank VC investings or to collect VC investings in Web3 don't have a complete picture, but I do think they're a good indicator if we're looking at, does this number go up or does it go down? Similar to having a lead investor in a specific company, a lead VC, that often instills trust and makes it easier for other VCs to come on board or for other investors to come on board. And if you extrapolate that on a like industry-wide level and you see Paradigm wanting to raising a $750 million fund to deploy into Web3, that projects a lot of confidence, which I think will extend to other venture capital firms as well, which also will extend to tech-heavy VCs, or finance-heavy VCs, which aren't necessarily in Web3 yet. Like some of the biggest VC firms in Web3 aren't like Web3 native. They like have been an extension of a already existing quote unquote like traditional venture capital business. So I do think that from that standpoint of trust in the industry, this is a very, very helpful headline to have. And in terms of trying to determine where it is, that's more difficult because you already had a good uptick in activity in venture capital investments. I do think you had a lot of very attractive deals at the cusp or the change from the bear to the bull market in Q4. So we are a bit later than that. There is obviously a bit of lag with like bigger institutions moving in, even if VCs in Web3 can be very, very agile. So pinpointing where exactly that puts us into the cycle, judging by that fund alone, is like a very, very difficult thing to do, and I wouldn't have a good answer to that.
Yeah, it's interesting. Like I definitely take your point. At the back end of last year, there was an uptick, and it's really been in full force for quite some time now. It does make me wonder though, like from our personal perspectives, Brett, I see with your hand raised, want to go to Sammy and then we'll come to you too on this. It does make me wonder from a personal perspective, like we've noticed a lot of the deals getting worse for sure. Having said that, there's a lot of good stuff out, which you can kind of get into and have just even a few months wait actually, because people are trying to push the tokens relatively quickly. But the deal's getting worse. I don't know if that means they're bad deals. Maybe just the ones at the back end of last year were so good that they kind of messed up the perspective. I think that's what's probably the case, actually. But yeah, interesting reflection from me there. Sammy, I want to come to you if you want to build on that or take in a different direction, then we'll go to Brad.
I think it's, I mean, I wouldn't say it's necessarily certain projects are just generally worse. I think it's more, we're at that sweet spot for companies in the cycle where there's so much funding going around that they can pretty much, they can suggest what the terms are. So I've seen projects that really struggled to raise altogether probably about 6 months ago, and now they're like 4 or 5 times oversubscribed, and now they're in the driving seat, so they can pretty much dictate the terms. So I think we're at that point where, and coming back to that 750 million VC raise, they've obviously seen that there's opportunity. I do wonder whether, I mean, I don't know if that suggests that we're at a certain point in the cycle. I think they're just trying to capitalize on that. They'll probably have a lot more clout because they can offer more than your average investor in terms of networking and other things. So, and I've seen from a KOL perspective, the investments that you get offered, like they'll say, well, what can you do for us? We'll let you invest, but what can you do for us? And if it's not enough, then they'll just go to the next KOL that can offer a little bit more. So it's interesting to see that dynamic shift over the past 3, 4, 5 months. But yeah, I think the company's protocols are more in the driving seat now. So
yeah, that's a very, very, very good point about how they're in the driving seat. However, my counterpoint to that is that I've noticed now, I mean, on the one hand, you're in the driving seat because why would you be in the driving seat? Because I've lost your thought, Sammy. What was it?
So they've got so much liquidity being thrown at them. They can be selective.
So that's the thing. So yes, you're in the driving seat on the from this perspective that there's a lot of liquidity in the ecosystem. However, I would also say that I've noticed now the raises are happening slower because they're having to compete with more people because everyone is also trying to raise. Now, maybe this is not for the very top things which get oversubscribed ASAP, you know, but there are definitely some other projects as well which are also very good, but it seems to be just taking a little bit longer because now people are looking at multiple deals on the table at the same time. So there's that challenge as well. But as you say, someone stepping in with this amount of capital is helpful because they can just deploy aggressively across the board. Very, very interesting thoughts there. Brad, would love to bring you in on this. What are your thoughts on the funding environment at the moment and Paradigm raising a relatively significant fund?
Yeah, I'll try not to make it too long. So 2 things. One, like, yeah, so you guys are talking about both the fund side and then there's the project side. And relative numbers typically lets me understand where we are with these things. And if you look back at 2021, late 2021, you could see like it was pretty normal to raise cumulatively amongst projects between $3 and $4 billion, and then peaked at $7 billion in October. So, and right now, as an industry, we are just now cresting 1 billion. Just to give like relative numbers to back in the hype of 2021, how much money was actually getting thrown around to project side. So we're still, 30% of what was average for almost half the year, and then 20% of what, maybe even less of what the peak craziness was back in 2021. I would expect those numbers to get a little crazier this year with the ETF being approved and more money being able to come into the ecosystem. But so that's on the project side, just to show relative numbers. And then anecdotally on the the actual fundraising side, again, there were single funds raising above $1 billion, $1.5 billion last cycle. And with this one just now being 750 and coming off of DAS London, which was a big business meeting or convention. Anecdotally from there, people are just now saying that they're starting to notice a thaw, is how they said it, a thaw in the ability to raise from LPs over there. So the top of that funnel to actually be able to raise those funds is just now starting, and it's mostly from existing funds like Paradigm. Whenever we start seeing brand new, like out of the gate, we think we're better than everyone else, funds raising crazy hundreds of millions of dollars, that's when you start noticing things are getting crazy, because there's so much money coming in, and people, like allocators, are trying to get in wherever they can, that they're willing to risk that with unknown funds that have, you know, whatever, some new strategy that they want to do, whether it's DePIN or AI, crypto, or whatever. Whenever I start seeing that and the multi-billions, or at least over the billion threshold, that's when I'll start, you know, looking around the room and seeing things are getting weird.
Interesting. So just for clarity, I think that's a really interesting point. So you think, did you say that people were saying that they're finding it challenging to raise from LPs? Why exactly was that in this current environment?
Well, up until now, right? I mean, everyone moves a little bit slower than we do in this industry, right?
Sure.
We're so hyper aware of how fast money's moving because we're in it.
Sure.
Money coming from outside of our industry, they were saying, was just now starting to thaw, and I'd be allowed to be allocated to these funds that are raising. So you see Paradigm, which obviously is a very well-known fund, been around for years, existed multiple cycles, right? So they have the credit to be able to raise a $750 million fund, but that is still not as big as it got last time, and Paradigm is existing. Whenever we start noticing that same amount of money, or in that neighborhood, are being allocated to brand new funds doing whatever, that's whenever, you know, okay, like it's getting to the fringes, or whenever you see Paradigm again doing, you know, multi-billions.
Got it. Understand your point fully now. That's a very interesting way to think about it. It's like the industry leaders moving first, they are able to raise capital first, when people who are unknowns or maybe newer to the ecosystem raising that same amount, and then the bigger players raising multi-billions, that's where you may want to raise some questions. Interesting perspective there, Brett. I very much appreciate it. Let's get into the second headline. We're just going to spend a few minutes on the Wormhole Airdrop today. It is indeed live, I believe. You can claim your W. For the people who don't know, Wormhole was, all you had to do was take some ETH or USD from either Solana or ETH and send it across to the other side. You just had to bridge money from ETH to Solana, or money from Solana to ETH, and you do that a bunch of times with some volume, and you got some W coin. So that airdrop is live, and it seems to have come out at a, correct me if I'm wrong here, guys, I'm reading the chart, $15 billion valuation. It's trading at around $1.3 per token. Legendary. I think you were probably the biggest recipient out of us. What are your thoughts? What are we thinking here?
Yep, I just tried claiming in the background to see if it works, how it's set up. There's many ways how you could qualify for that, from Discord roles, from having used it on EVM, from having used it all the way back on Terra. And they set the claim dashboard up in a beautiful way, where you basically can connect all of your wallets and like aggregate that claim and then claim. Claim went through, trading works very well. We've seen almost $10 million in volume happening so far. I think when I claimed, it was at 160. If you compare that to the figures on Whales Market again was pretty spot on the pre-market, with average asks that were at $1.5, average bids at $1.23. So the current price right now at 134 is pretty much in the middle of that. Binance had announced, I think that was yesterday though, that they will list it in the seed category. And if we look at the overall numbers, or the overall volume that Wormhole did over the last 30 days, that is 625 mil, according to DappRadar, and which is actually up 52% compared to the previous month. So despite snapshot and everything that happened before, there's still a lot of volume happening. Volume is increasing. If I would have to assume a direction, I would probably think that's money flowing into Solana to participate in the Memecoin casino. The $13 or $14 billion FTV is honestly fucking high. That's like impressive. I did pick out a couple other protocols to kind of benchmark against. If you look at a pure bridge on ETH and L2s like Hop protocol, they do have an FTV of 45, 50 mil. If you look at something bigger like Hashflow not only offers bridging, but also is a DEX aggregator. They definitely do more things, but also more prominent protocol. Even they're quote unquote only sitting at a $406 million FTV with 11% of the token supply circulating. So I think it's very impressive to see Wormhole and do obviously acknowledge that it is across L1s connecting Solana to ETH, which is very significant. But that $13 billion FTV, $14 billion FTV is pretty impressive to see that number.
Yeah, it's so high. We were talking about this off air. It just sounds so high. But I guess the thing is that, like, it is a slightly more costly to make this trade. So I guess it is revenue generating in quite a significant way because it does take not a huge clip, but like a decent clip when you're trying to move this money across from ETH to Solana or the other way around. So interesting stuff. Other points for people that might be interested in getting allocations to things like this. Legendary, just to check, did you say, I might be making this up, did you say that the volume has actually been increasing on the protocol? And is that because, do you think is there going to be a second airdrop potentially? Is this like season 1 or is this it?
I don't know if there's going to be a second airdrop. If you look at the post that Wormhole came out with 20 minutes ago, they said phase 1 was launched on Solana. W will initially launch as native SPL token on Solana network. And they have announced a phase 2, which is EVM expansion via Wormhole NTT. NTT being native token transfers, lock W to self-delegate, multi-chain governance. So I don't know if that means that there will be another airdrop or not. I haven't looked into the tokenomics, but I can't answer that. But I definitely think that even if the volume had increased, that a massive part of that is just people wanting to get money into Solana to participate in the casino.
This is actually the perfect type of airdrop, right? Where there are actually no future incentives. I don't think, we don't know. But this whole campaign of doing the airdrop has brought so much marketing to it. And the fact that Solana, people actually genuinely do want to get to Solana. And now, so people are going to continue using it, whether or not there is an airdrop or not. They think the product's good. And like, that's actually the perfect way for a product to use an airdrop. And maybe just a fortunate scenario for them where the product is such that I don't know if there are competitors or not, but they've managed to distinguish themselves in that respect. So interesting stuff there. Cool to report that. Funky, your hand is raised. Do you want to come in on this or the bigger conversation here? Give us a tape before we get into the final headline.
Jim, my friends, yeah, just a couple quick things because I've been claiming my wormhole in the background. Cool. I think, going back to what Karma said a long time ago, an airdrop is a marketing spend. And I think that really makes a lot of sense. But for people who have a mad lad, just like a bad kid, if you had the Discord roll, they got a pretty sizable drop worth about 25K. Although
they got 16,000 tokens.
Yeah, something crazy.
25K.
So just wanted to shout that out in case people had, but they might only got like 20%. I did see some kind of post about it, but I just wanted to let everybody know in case they have that to make sure they check off the Discord roll box and get that extra wormhole allocation. Just lost form for me because I'm not that bad kid anymore.
Good shout. Great shout, Funky. That's another one of the things we want to keep on top of, right? Like, certainly we mentioned the Remelios getting an Athena airdrop, but the Mad Lads one was way bigger for this. Way bigger. I think the Remelios and Miladies got about $3,000 worth, whereas Mad Lads got 25K from Wormhole. So pretty significant stuff. Want to keep tabs on which NFT collections kind of get that attention thrown to them. Let's get into the
quick addition to that real quick, because we touched on, is there going to be a season 2 or not? I looked at the tokenomics. 70% was allocated for the community. 11% of that allocation is unlocked to TG. That was this airdrop, and the remaining 6% will be unlocked in the 4 months after the TG.
Interesting. To who?
It's part of a bigger community allocation, so I do think that that is already allocated. And
do you know what? I think, for example, the Mad Lads, like they don't get it all at the upfront.
is it vesting for them? Yeah, then that makes sense.
They get a certain amount now, and then it vests. So interesting that like that's where we're at in terms of the development of these things, where it's kind of getting more sophisticated. Like, yeah, just because you're an NFT holder, you might be on some vesting schedule as well, which is interesting to see. Let's do the Web3 roundup to get you up to speed with everything else that's happened in the last 24 hours. And then we're going to hit the final headline, which I do think will be interesting to touch on. We'll only have 5 minutes for it though. Okay, Web3 roundup from the snapshot pinned up top. The gentleman sell out 10,000 collection on base with no X account, only a Farcaster account. I thought that was pretty significant because given how Web3 Twitter native we all are, to be able to sell out a collection with Twitter not knowing anything about it because it's all on Farcaster, I thought that was pretty cool to see. Number two, as we mentioned earlier, US government initiates a test transaction to send 30K Bitcoin of Silk Road funds to Coinbase. Number three, MetaStreet announces snapshot for holders of their LCT liquid credit tokens on Blast. Number four, synthetic dollar stablecoin protocol Athena, we mentioned them yesterday, soars to $0.9 after launch at 0.55. The FDV is now at 13.4 billion for that stablecoin protocol. Next, OpenSea announces creators can now set and enforce their own earnings, kind of coming late to the party there. Azuki announces former Capcom illustrator Kinu Nishimura as first character designer of anthology series. And finally, Memecoin mania continues as multiple coins created for Ansem, Ansem's cat, Ansem's hat, Elon's mum, Ansem's mum. It's all kind of nonsense going on Solana. And I just felt my conclusion this morning was that we've got to cool off, guys. We can't move up in terms of price until this behavior gets ironed out. We can't trade this stuff and move up. We do not deserve higher prices. That is the Web3 roundup from the snapshot, as always, pinned up top. We've got one final headline, which I do think is very important to touch on before we close out. We only have a few minutes. I'm going to share the tweet from Cyrus, who pointed out a very precarious position for CryptoPunks. Don't hate me for bringing this up. There are around 100 loans over 40 ETH on CryptoPunks that expire over the next couple of months. A couple of punks sold today for 40 to 41 ETH. There's a pretty good chance we see a bunch of liquidations and punks sub 40 for the first time since summer 2021. Since that tweet, as mentioned in the first roundup, punks are now, the floor is at 42 ETH. So obviously a loan at 40 ETH is almost 100% loan to value. And it may be the case that the person who has borrowed will not pay back the lender in those instances, which is why the lender will get stuck with the punks potentially, and whom they may not want the punks. This is how it works. They may not want the punks, and therefore they would look to sell them at whatever price they can get. That's the thinking. That's where Cyrus is thinking. Sammy, would love to hear your thoughts on this. Do you follow this market in great detail? What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, it's interesting. I think if you're looking to scoop up a punk, it's prime time to put those loans out. But yeah, I don't loan that much against punks, so I can't speak in detail on the market specifically. I know you've worked with Gondi in the past, and they're quite big on that. So I don't know how the auto financing steps in when this market hits, but to me, like, this is probably one of the most reliable NFTs to lend against. So it strikes me as, yeah, it doesn't really concern me when it comes to, like, when you compare it to, like, whether it's Pudgies or Azuki's or some of the other projects that potentially are a lot more volatile. So maybe a slight dip could be a good buying opportunity. But yeah, like I said, I'm not fully across the punk lending market.
Yeah, Mikhail in the comments says punks heading lower, too much value locked in without much upside at the moment. So the thing that I would completely agree with you, Sammy, is that yes, punks traditionally are one of the better things to be able to lend against. I am also, similar to what you just said, way more comfortable in general lending against punks than I am other assets. But that's only at the right number. Like, everything has its number. Like, yes, I'm more comfortable in punks at 60% loan to value than Pudgy Penguins at 60% loan to value, because punks have historically been more stable. Therefore, I'm happier at that number. But in the end, I'm no more confident in punks at 90% loan to value than pudgies at 90% loan to value, because that's just a dangerous number. And I think that's the issue that the collection faces at the moment, where the LTV, the loan to value ratio, is way too high. And it doesn't matter how good the asset is historically, like, unless someone is kind of using the loan function as a like bid. It's like, okay, I'll give you a 95% loan to value because actually I wouldn't mind if you defaulted, and I'll buy that because I want to keep it. If that's the case, then it's kind of okay. But that's not, I don't think that's what lenders are typically trying to do. They don't want the asset, they want the interest on it, or they want you to default with a big gap. So it would be great if they went in, if you had this loan at 25 ETH and punks goes down to 40 and your loan comes due and they default, great. I put in 25 ETH, you haven't paid me back. This asset is worth 40 ETH. I make a 15 ETH profit. That's wonderful. But now it's a legitimately dangerous position for the collection. I do want to do some more research myself because I didn't get in. So this website that Cyrus was using is called Snow Genesis, I think. So I want to get in there and check it out myself. But Legendary, do you have any headline thoughts here? Any reflections?
A quick headline thought from the perspective of a punk owner who, not me as a punk owner, but from the perspective of a theoretical punk owner who was borrowing ETH against their punk, and now they're sitting at an almost 100% loan to value, and they're about to default. What a beautiful and tax efficient way to sell your punk, because obviously defaulting on loans in many jurisdictions is a more tax efficient way to separate yourself from a JPEG than just straight up market selling.
Yes. However, you probably were not thinking of that at the time when punks were at 60.
No, but right. if you took out the loan before that, and now you're about to default, it's a real thing if you want to even pay it back, or if you probably would have put that ETH to use in the meantime. So I do think if with a loan, even if it's a punk, and unless you have like a huge emotional attachment and you just want it back, you might have a very nice incentive to not pay back the loan.
Sure. I mean, I agree with you. Maybe this is a worse scenario, not necessarily for the borrower. It's a worse scenario for the lender and actually all other punks, frankly. If there are this many coming up for trying to do a quick look at this. I don't know if I'll be able to, in fact, I can share this. This will be interesting, and then we'll close out in just a minute. So it looks like I need to get onto the website live, but this is just from the screenshot from Cyrus. I don't know if you can read that properly. I'm kind of zoomed in already. Let me see if I can zoom in a bit more. It doesn't work. So there's just loads and loads of punks due in 23 days at, do you know what? This is on MetaStreet, Legendary. And remember we were talking about how you can do tranches on MetaStreet, and there's the 20 ETH tranche and there's a 40 ETH tranche. And we were speaking, I was like, man, don't do the 40 ETH tranche. It's just not worth it. It's too close to where the price is. And I think you switched. I don't know if this is like part of the tranche, like the crypto punks that they've got for the tranche. Need to research more into that, to be honest. But it does look
maybe David will step in with another announcement. 2 million backstop on the loans.
Yeah, I mean, they're going to need more than that. There's a lot of MetaStreet here. I can see the MetaStreet symbol. A lot of MetaStreet. So, okay, interesting. Let's go and create a plan to save the punks. Guys, that is the end of the show. Thank you so much for joining. Run a little bit over time. Thank you, as always, to my co-host Legendary and Sammy. Thank you to our speakers, Bread, Oxy, Funky, and Kusho. And thank you all for joining. Remember, we do this every single day, Monday to Friday at 7 a.m. Eastern Time, live on X, live on YouTube too. Have a wonderful day. We will be back with you tomorrow. Take care. Bye-bye.